Welcome back, everyone, to episode 9 of the Weekly Grind. Just to let you know what the topic of the day will be, or of the week, it will be primary edge grinds as well as the edge degree and angle. Just to kind of give you guys a heads up of what's going to be going on for this week and some news that's going on. Chasing More Smoke, a barbecue team, competition barbecue team that we sponsor mainly out of Pasadena, does a lot of the cook-offs here in Houston. I think one of the guys was even a judge in the Houston Livestock Rodeo competition. He was a judge, if I'm not mistaken. But Chasing More Smoke Shop will be out in Alvin. Just let me make sure I got my dates right. March 22nd and 23rd at the Alvin Music Festival and Cook-Off. Go and check them out, guys. 20 to 30 bucks a ticket. All you can eat food and drinks. Really great barbecue. They always place really good guys, really cool guys. Let them know Serenity Knives sent you, and they'll take great care of you. Other than that, we've got 2 new knives going into stock. We'll get to that right now, and we'll go ahead and get to the topic right after. So thanks again. Don't forget, if you haven't already, to click subscribe, get the notifications going, and make sure you're following on us on Instagram and Facebook as well. Let's get straight to it.
Okay, today we have 2 knives going into stock. We have a Giotto and we have a Hanasuki. The Giotto will be the 52-100 410 laminate steel, and this has the acid waxed finish on it. This handle is going to be blue stabilized coral with carbon fiber and 2 liners, blue and black. And then this is the similar knife, different steel. This is CPM 154 stainless, and it also has the same handle construction, so they are not matching, but they're complementary to each other. Check out the more detailed description on the website. Thank you much.
All right, everyone, so we are back at a little bit different of an angle. We're going to be demonstrating some of the stuff we drew out for you, and just so Russell doesn't have to go back and forth from looking at the board and looking at the camera, I've got it set to where I can change the camera angle or adjust it based off of where he's looking at as he describes everything. But as you can see here, Russell's going to start from the left. We've got our basic edge grinds. Russell will be descriptive about each one, starting from the chisel. So Russell, whenever you're ready, buddy.
Yeah, so chisel grind, this is something that will be perfectly flat along one side and then cut completely in from the other side. So this is used for sushi, sashimi, and a couple like deba style knives, again mainly for fish production. You'll see the dotted line a lot of times in the middle of the blade. This will be fully like a hollow grind, at least for the half of it, and so it's a form of a flat grind, but it's specifically a chisel grind. Great for cutting fish, really delicate kinds of cuts and such.
Well, real quick question. Yeah. What kind of performance am I gaining or losing when I go from that flat side to that little bit of a bow side on the chisel grind that you've got?
The hollow grind
from the dotted line to the flat grind. What kind of performance am I gaining and losing right there?
So what you gain is that section of the knife will literally not be touching that fish as you're dragging it through it, and it's also easier to flatten these knives this way because there's less steel to flatten. So one of the really important things about this is literally maintaining this flat. So you'll have a little bit here that's still flat, and you need to maintain that flatness for this perfect zero grind. And okay, let me pause and say what a zero grind is. This is literally where, like, did you see this? How it breaks, and that's ground. This is literally ground all the way to an edge. So there's no primary grind, there's only one primary grind line. You don't have a secondary edge bevel, if you will, like some of these other styles of knives. It's literally ground all the way, and you can literally feel the taper all the way to the edge. So with this style of zero grind, it's very important for these 2 facets to remain perfectly flat and for best cutting for performance. So again, great for sushi, cutting fish, and doing a lot of other cool things, mainly again with fish.
Awesome, awesome. Let's go on to compound.
Compound grinds. These are for your heavier duty chisels, axes, not chisels, cleavers, axes, something where you need a really stout angle behind your cutting edge for cutting through bones, joints, and that kind of thing. So it'll provide a much more stout edge that'll be resistant to chipping and nicking and such things like that. So that's a compound edge. We don't do these a lot, except literally on cleavers. I think is really the only thing we do compounds on. Very similar to convex. We don't do this one really at all. We've done it a few times. So what this is instead of it being tapered the typical way, you basically think of it as an almond. The whole bevel is shaped kind of like that, and some people love it, some people like the way it cuts. We don't particularly like it, so we don't do it a lot. Scandi grind is a modification of some of the other ones you'll see here. So basically, Scandi grinds are usually about a quarter of the way up the blade, and they'll be fully zero ground. So again, no secondary edge bevel. But you won't see the grind lines coming all the way up, because again, they want the compound aspect of this to where this won't chip out, but they want it to cut really well. So it's what they developed in the Scandinavian region centuries ago as their like bushwork tool. There's a lot of different examples of these. Pukos will have these a lot, which is a very Scandinavian, Norwegian, Finnish style of utility knife. Great edge, but the first time you sharpen it, unless you flatten this whole thing, you're basically breaking into another grind style. And like I said, unless you fully flatten, whoops, or erase the grind line. So that's Scandi grind, and we've done that on occasion as well. And then you have your tried and true hollow grind, and there's actually two forms of hollow grind here. You have your very traditional, where it's literally, this is ground on a wheel, which creates the hollow, and what that does is it gives you an edge that doesn't have a whole lot of support behind it, but it's going to cut really well up into your bind point. Once you hit that, it's basically going to wedge, and it won't cut as much. So if you're cutting something, this big in relation, or you're just whittling, something like that, these will perform really well. You also have the added bonus of this geometry. You can really get in and curl things around if you're whittling. And then this is an extremely well done hollow grind, where literally you maintain this thinness, very similar to like a straight razor's ground. You maintain this thinness, so for a few years of sharpening, you're not going to be fattening up your blade like you will be once you reach this point. And this is something some really high-end knives are done on, straight razors, like I said, and it's a great grind. Absolutely love it, and it does look great and performs very well. And then you have the tried and true flat grind. Most knives, I just go to say most knives at this point are made in flat grind, especially once you get into the bigger sizes. It provides a very linear, very predictable cutting edge and cutting feel, because you don't have a specific bind point here until you reach this, but it's less drastic. In chef's knives, you'll find this wedge literally goes almost all the way back to the spine, so it gives you a very linear progression of friction as you cut through food. And then these can also have modifications. This is the typical 50-50. You can get these just offset like at a 90-10. We see a lot of 80-20s, 70-30s, etc., which is the blending between a chisel grind and a flat grind, where it won't be hollow grind like this one is on the back. It'll be even, but it'll just be ever so slightly askew. And those are used for different things, like when you're in a professional kitchen and you need that food just to get out of your way a little bit. Having a 70-30 can help push that food away just a little bit. Honestly, most people that have them, they eventually come a 50-50. Whether it's worth the time to learn to sharpen and everything, it's really personal preference. It's not good or bad, it's just different. It's a good way to do it if you know what you're doing with it. Most chefs either go full 50-50 or chisel. We've done a few in between. It's just not something that's like super popular at this moment. It's one of those kind of trends or fads that comes and goes. So that's the breakdown of not all but the most popular grinds, and Daniel's going to jump in here.
No, I just had a quick question. You were talking about sharpening, and so I overheard you also say in the kitchen I'll see more of a flat and a chisel grind. Right. what am I more commonly going to find in the kitchen? What am I more commonly going to find in an outdoor knife? Because those are the two main types that we mainly deal with. Although you have dealt in a variety of different edges. So which ones are we going to see more common of in everyday use? And
that's an excellent question. So your chisel grind and your full flat grind, you're going to see in kitchen knives. In the flat grind, you'll also see machetes, axes are ground that way. Anything like that, right? Flat grinds, you'll see some production knives with a flat grind. Most of them will again be a full flat grind, but you'll see some production knives in a hollow grind. I said that backwards, excuse me. But most of what you'll see in hollow grinds are pocket knives, tactical knives, skinning knives, hunting, that kind of range, because you're not slicing through something, you're typically cutting something or skinning it. You don't need to get all the way through it. You're opening a box, you only need, that much of your blade. Obviously, respectively, it's much smaller.
Right.
But yeah, you opening a box, you're not slicing through an entire potato, you're cutting a millimeter of tape. And then Convex and Compound are also really outdoorsy knives, as well as Scandi. Those are really where those things shine, where you're not cutting through something, you're just cutting something or debarking or whittling, that kind of thing.
On the note of the compound edge, we've also seen some outdoor blades with compound grinds.
Yeah.
And so I know you can't demonstrate it here, but just kind of point out to what that can kind of look like on a knife when we see a compound grind. For instance, a tracker knife with a flat and a hollow grind on it.
And so what Daniel is alluding to is a compound grind where, sorry Daniel.
No, you're right. I just took hours on that drawing.
So, you have a very pretty knife here, right?
Very pretty.
Very pretty. This is the blade. So what Daniel's alluding to, and this is your handle, whatever. This will be hollow ground right here, so it's literally concave in, and then this section here, it will start a flat grind. And they do that for different things because they know you're not going to be slicing through something, so they do a hollow grind, so it makes a really tough edge here, but then if you are going to be slicing, you'll be slicing out here. Everyone basically knows and admits that a flat grind is the best cutting grind at this point because it is very linear and progressive. And so this being flat out here allows you to actually cut through something. Whether that's a branch or a potato, you're making dinner at the camp, but you can whittle and do everything you need to with this hollow ground here. And so you'll see a lot of folding knives, tactical knives have this compound grind, and they even start doing it where this is the flat section and this is hollow grind, which I can't tell you what you use that for because I don't know. But it looks cool. I will say it does look really cool.
So flat grinds being the majority of the grinds that we'll see, and pretty much the primary one that has the best cutting performance. What's the ease of sharpening on a lot of these? Now I see a lot of very just straight linear edges except for the convex, which you just so happen to erase. But when we're talking about sharpening, and you and I, we sharpen on the stone, which is also very flat.
Yeah.
So I kind of know what's coming with this question, but what's the ease of sharpening these very different grinds?
They're all triangles. Honestly, if you look at the end of it, and Daniel set this up for me perfectly, everything's basically a triangle. So if you can maintain a flat on a stone, you can sharpen any of these. With a flat grind, you can even thin this whole section on a stone if you get up into the thicker section as a knife wears. So if you can maintain this little bit of a flat on a stone with practice, it basically comes down to your steel at that point. A lot of these, obviously besides this one that has no flat on this, you can't really sharpen this on a flat stone. You've got to use something recurved the opposite way to sharpen that. That's probably the most difficult one to sharpen on the stone because you need that shaped stone. Basically everything else you can do on a flat stone very easily. Like I said, the first time you sharpen the Scandi, you're basically either creating a secondary edge bevel or you're fully flattening this whole thing, and there you go. But basically to sharpen them, they'll all sharpen very similar.
So because we sharpen, and we've got just a couple more minutes before we've got to end this, but because we sharpen mainly on our grinders, which are mainly flat belts, and we also sharpen on stones, when a convex edge walks in, what do you usually do to that convex edge so that people kind of get an idea of what that looks like? If you need to erase anything, there you go.
So having the whole edge, and I'm going to turn it sideways, having the whole edge be like this, right? Obviously, I'm not an artist, I make knives, is we have to use what we call a J-flex, or a flexible belt, to be able to get this contour along the edge. And we'll sharpen them very similar to how we do all the flat grinds, but you have to basically push into a J-flex belt to make that contour around, and then we sharpen it all the way up to 2000 on a flexible foam belt, as opposed to going to the stones on 1000. So we can recreate that angle with a flexible belt. It's just one of those things that you can't do it on a stone because there's no flat, so you've got to figure something out. So over the years I've developed a system to where I can sharpen this as effectively as we sharpen a flat edge.
Awesome. So we can definitely sharpen it. Now, what if somebody watches this video, they have a convex edge, but because we talked about the flat grind or the flat edge being a little bit more of a better use and utilitarian kind of edge, someone walks in with a convex edge but they want it to be flat, are we able to doing that?
Oh yeah, because this can very easily, good pen right here, become flat.
So we can definitely grind that down and make it So
definitely.
Overall, everyone, we can definitely take care of sharpening when it comes to multiple edges and angles. We definitely have a variety of edges and angles we've worked with. If you guys have any other questions, please always feel free to comment and just let us know anything that you would like us to cover. If you haven't subscribed, once again, please subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all of our social medias. This is going to be it for our demonstration for today and the episode on grinds. So be ready for next week when we have another episode for you. This is episode 9. Later, guys.